day423 of reading Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Let's get started. Currently on page 401. Let's go lock in. Yet make him and George proud, and that they were seriously considering admitting that he was related to them, something he assured Ron they had been trying to deny for 4 years. The only thing really worrying Harry was how much Ron was allowing the tactics of the Slytherin team to upset him before they even got onto the pitch. Harry, of course, had endured their snide comments for more than 4 years, so whispers of, "Hey, Potty, I heard Warrington's sworn to knock you off your broom on Saturday," far from chilling his blood, made him laugh. "Warrington's aim so pathetic, I'd be more worried if he were aiming for the person next to me," he retorted, which made Ron and Hermione laugh and wiped the smirk off Pansy Parkinson's face. But Ron had never endured a relentless campaign of insults, jeers, and intimidation. When Slytherins, some of the 7th years and considerably larger than he was, muttered as they passed in the corridors, "Got your bed booked in the hospital, Wink Weasley?" He did not laugh, but turned a delicate shade of green. When Draco Malfoy imitated Ron dropping the quaffle, which he did whenever they were within sight of each other, Ron's ears glowed red and his hands shook so badly that he was likely to drop whatever he was holding at the time, too. October extinguished itself in a rush of howling winds, and driving rain in November arrived. Cold as frozen iron, with hard frost every morning and icy drafts that bit at exposed hands and faces. The skies and the ceiling of the Great Hall turned a pale, pearly gray. The mountains around Hogwarts became snow-capped, and the temperature in the castle dropped so far that many students wore their thick, protective dragon-skin gloves in the corridors between lessons. The morning of the match dawned bright and cold. When Harry awoke, he looked around at Ron's bed and saw him sitting bolt upright, his arms around his knees, staring fixedly into space. "You all right?" said Harry. Ron nodded but did not speak. Harry was reminded forcibly of the time that Ron had accidentally put a slug-vomiting charm on himself. He looked just as pale and sweaty as he had done then, not to mention as reluctant to open his mouth. "You just need some breakfast," Harry said bracingly. "Come on, louder." The Great Hall was filling up fast when they arrived, the talk louder and the mood more exuberant than usual. As they passed the Slytherin table, there was an upsurge of noise. Harry looked around and saw that nearly everyone there was wearing, in addition to the usual green and silver scarves and hats, silver badges in the shape of what seemed to be crowns. For some reason, many of them waved at Ron, laughed uproariously. Harry tried to see what was written on the badge as he walked by, but he was too concerned to get Ron past the table quickly to linger long enough to read them. He received a rousing welcome at the Gryffindor table, where everyone was wearing red and gold, but far from raising Ron's spirit, the cheer seemed to sap the last of his morale. He collapsed onto the nearest bench, looking as though he were facing his final meal. "I must have been mental to do this," he said in a croaky whisper. "Mental." "Don't be thick," said Harry firmly, passing him a choice of cereals. "You're going to be fine. It's normal to be nervous." "I'm rubbish," croaked Ron. "I'm lousy. I can't play to save my life. What was I thinking?" "Get a grip," said Harry sternly. "Look at that save you made with your foot the other day. Even Fred and George said it was brilliant." Harry turned a tortured face to Harry. "That was an accident," he whispered miserably. "I didn't mean to do it. I slipped off my broom when none of you were looking, and I was trying to get back on, and I kicked the quaffle by accident." "Well," said Harry, recovering quickly from this unpleasant surprise, "a few more accidents like that and the game's in the bag, isn't it?" Hermione and Ginny sat down opposite them, wearing red and gold scarves, gloves, and rosettes. "How are you feeling?" Ginny asked Ron, who was now staring into the dregs of milk at the bottom of his empty cereal bowl, as though seriously considering attempting to drown himself in them. "He's just nervous," said Harry. "Well, that's a good sign. I never feel you perform as well in his exams if you're not a bit nervous," said Hermione heartily. "Hello," said a vague and dreamy voice from behind them. Harry looked up. Luna Lovegood had drifted over from Ravenclaw table. Many people were staring at her and a few openly laughing and pointing. She had managed to procure a hat shaped like a life-size lion's head, which was perched precariously on her head. I'm supporting Gryffindor, said Luna, pointing unnecessarily at her hat. Look what it does. She reached up and tapped that hat with her wand. It opened its mouth wide and gave an extremely realistic roar that made everyone in the vicinity jump. It's good, isn't it? Said Luna happily. I wanted to have it chewing up a serpent to represent Slytherin, but there wasn't time. Anyways, good luck, Ronald. She drifted away. They had not quite recovered from the shock of Luna's hat before Angelina came hurrying toward them, accompanied by Katie and Alicia, whose eyebrows had mercifully been returned to normal by Madame Pomfrey. When you're ready, she said, we're going to go straight down to the pitch, check out conditions, and change. We'll be there in a bit, Harry assured her. Ron's just going to have some breakfast. It became clear after 10 minutes, however, that Ron was not capable of eating anything more, and Harry thought it best to get him down to the changing rooms. As they rose from the table, Hermione got up too, and taking Harry's arm, she drew him to one side. Don't let Ron see what's on those Slytherin's badges, she whispered urgently. Harry looked questioningly at her, but she shook her head warningly. Ron had just ambled over to them, looking lost and desperate. Good luck, Ron, said Hermione, standing on tiptoe and kissing him on the cheek. And you, Harry? Ron seemed to come to himself slightly as they walked back across the great hall. He touched the spot on his face where Hermione had kissed him, looking puzzled, as though he were not quite sure what had just happened. He seemed too distracted to notice much around him, but Harry cast a curious glance at the crown-shaped badges as they passed the Slytherin table, and this time he made out the words etched onto them. Weasley is our king. With an unpleasant feeling that this could not mean anything good, he hurried Ron across the entrance hall, down the stone steps, and out into the icy air. The frosty grass crunched under their feet as they hurried down the sloping lawns toward the stadium. There was no wind at all, and the sky was a uniform pearly white, which meant that visibility would be good without the drawback of direct sunlight in the eyes. Harry pointed out these encouraging factors to Ron as they walked, but he was not sure that Ron was listening. Angelina had changed already and was talking to the rest of the team when they entered. Harry and Ron pulled on their robes. Ron attempted to do his up back to front for several minutes before Alicia took pity on him and went to help, and then sat down to listen to the pre-match talk while the babble of voices outside grew steadily louder as the crowd came pouring out of the castle toward the pitch. Okay, I've only just found out the final lineup for Slytherins, said Angelina, consulting a piece of parchment. Last year's beater, Derek and Bull, have left now, but it looks as though Montagues replaced them with the usual gorillas rather than anyone who can actually fly particularly well. The two blocks called Crab and Goyle. I don't know much about them. We do, said Harry and Ron together. Well, they don't look bright enough to tell one end of a broom from another, said Angelina, pocketing her parchment. But then I was always surprised Derek and Bull managed to find their way onto the pitch without signposts. Crab and Goyle are in the same mold, Harry assured her. They could hear the hundreds of footsteps mounting the bank benches of the spectators' stands now. Some people were singing, though Harry could not make out the words. He was starting to feel nervous, but he knew his butterflies were as nothing to Ron's, who was clutching his stomach and staring straight ahead again, his jaw set and his complexion pale gray. It's time, said Angelina in a hushed voice, looking at her watch. Come on, everyone. Good luck. Their team rose, shouldered their brooms, and marched into a single file out of the changing room and into the dazzling sunlight. A roar of sound greeted them, in which Harry could still hear singing, though it was muffled by the cheers and whistles. The Slytherin team were standing waiting for them. They too were wearing those silver crown-shaped badges. The new Captain Montague was built along the same lines as Dudley, with the massive forearms like hairy hams. Behind them looked Crab and Goyle, almost as large, blinking stupidly in the sunlight, swinging their new beaters. Thank you, everyone. That's all for today. Bye. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to read page 406. Bookmark, close. Peace out.